Hello, folks. Welcome back with me. And now is Thursday on 25th of June 2026, and yeah, we're in reading day 3, and I was thinking that reading the 100 stories that I read before uh, doesn't catch me doesn't catch me up appeal doesn't appealing for me as are not is not appealing for me. And then yeah, I decided to read Word of Sophie's World instead. It's a comic about philosophy, and not comic, a story about philosophy from Norway. So it was written originally Norwegian, and then it's translated into English, and also there is also the translation in Indonesia. But yeah, we will read it in English. The first, Sophie's World, the Garden of Eden. At some point, something must have come from nothing. Sophie Amundsen was on her way home from school. She had walked the first part of the way with Joanna. They had been discussing robots. Joanna thought the human brain was like an advanced computer. Sophie was not certain she agreed. Surely a person was more than a piece of hardware? When they got to the supermarket, they went their separate ways. Sophie lived on the outskirts of a sprawling suburb and had almost twice as far to school as Joanna. There were no other houses beyond her garden, which made it seem as if her house lay at the end of the world. This was where the woods began. She turned the corner into Clover Close. At the end of the road there was a sharp bend known as Captain's Bend. Captain's Bend. People seldom went that way except on the weekend. It was early May. In some of the gardens, the fruit trees were encircled with dense clusters of daffodils. The birches were already up in pale green leaf. It was extraordinary how everything burst forth at this time of year. What made this great mass of green vegetation come welling up from the dead earth as soon as it got warm and the last traces of snow disappeared? As Sophie opened her garden gate, she looked in the mailbox. She was usually a lot of junk mail and a few big envelopes for her mother, a pile to dump on the kitchen table before she went up to her room to start her homework. From time to time, there would be a few letters from the bank for her father. But then he was not a normal father. Sophie's father was the captain of a big oil tanker and was away for most of the year. During the few weeks at a time when he was at home, he would shuffle around the house, making it nice and cozy for Sophie and her mother. But when he was at sea, he could seem very distant. There was only one letter in the mailbox, and it was for Sophie. The white envelope read, Sophie Amundsen, 3 Clover Close. That was all. It didn't say who it was from, even from. There was no stamp on it either. As soon as Sophie had closed the gate behind her, she opened the envelope. It contained only a slip of paper no bigger than the envelope. It read, "Who are you?" Nothing else, only the 3 words written by hand and followed by a large question mark. She looked at the envelope again. The letter was definitely for her. Who could have dropped it in the mailbox? Sophie let herself quickly into the red house. As always, her cat Shere managed to slink out of the bushes, jump onto the front step, and slip in through the door before she closed it behind her. Whenever Sophie's mother was in a bad mood, she would call the house they lived in a menagerie. A menagerie was a collection of animals. Sophie certainly had one and was quite happy with it. It had begun with the three goldfish, Goldtop, Red Riding Hood, and Blackjack. Next, she got two budgerigars called Smith and Smule, then Govinda the tortoise, and finally the marmalade called Shere. They had all been given to her to make up for the fact that her mother never got home from work until late in the afternoon and her father was away so much, sailing all over the world. Sophie slung her school bag on the floor and put a bowl of cat food out for Shere. Then she sat down on a kitchen stool with the mysterious letter in her hand. Who are you? She had no idea. She was Sophie Amundsen, of course, but who was that? She had not really figured that out yet. What if she had been given in a different name? Anne Knudsen, for instance. Would she then have been someone else? She suddenly remembered that Dad had originally wanted her to be called Lila Moore. Sophie tried to imagine herself shaking hands and introducing herself as Lila Moore Amundsen, but it seemed all wrong. It was someone else who kept introducing herself. She jumped up and went into the bathroom with the strange letter in her hand. She stood in front of the mirror and stared into her own eyes. I am Sophie Amundsen, she said. The girl in the mirror didn't react with as much as a twitch. Whatever Sophie did, she did exactly the same. Sophie tried to beat her reflection to it with a lightning movement, but the other girl was just as fast. Who are you? Sophie asked. She received no response to this either, but felt a momentary confusion as to whether it was she or her reflection who had asked the question. Sophie pressed her index finger to the nose in the mirror and said, "You are me." As she got no answer to this, she turned the sentence around and said, I am you. Sophie Amundsen was often dissatisfied with her appearance. She was frequently told that she had beautiful almond-shaped eyes, but that was probably just something people said because her nose was too small and her mouth was a bit too big. And her ears were much too close to her eyes. Worst of all was her straight hair, which it was impossible to do anything with it. Sometimes her father would stroke her hair and call her the girl with the flaxen hair, after a piece of music by Claude Debussy. It was all really for it was all right for him. He was not condemned to living with this straight dark hair. Neither most nor styling Gale had the slightest effect on Sophie's hair. Sometimes she thought she was so ugly that she wondered if she was malformed at birth. Her mother always went on about her difficult labor, but was that really what determined how you looked? Wasn't it odd that she didn't know who she was, and wasn't it reasonable that she hadn't been allowed to have any say in what she would look like? Her looks had just been dumped on her. She could choose her own friends, but certainly hadn't chosen herself. She had not even chosen to be a human being. What was a human being? Sophie looked up at the girl in the mirror again. I think I'll go upstairs and do my biology homework, she said, almost apologetically. Once she was out in the hall, she thought, no, I'd rather go out in the garden. Kitty, kitty, kitty! Sophie chased the cat out onto the doorstep and closed the front door behind her. As she stood outside on the gravel path with the mysterious letter in her hand, the strangest feeling came over her. She felt like a doll that had suddenly been brought to life by the wave of a magic wand. Wasn't it extraordinary to be in the world right now, wandering around in a wonderful adventure? Sherikan sprang lightly across the gravel and slid into a dense clump of red currant bushes. A leaf cat, a live cat, vibrant with energy from its white whiskers to the twitching tail at the end of its sleeky body. It was here in the garden too, but hardly aware of it in the same way as Sophie. As Sophie started to think about being alive, she began to realize that she would not be alive forever. I am in the window now, in the world now, so she thought, but one day I shall be gone. Was there a life after death? This was another question the cat was blissfully unaware of. It was not long since Sophie's grandmother has died. For more than 6 months, Sophie had missed her every single day. How unfair that life had to end. Sophie stood on the gravel path, thinking. She tried to think extra hard about being alive so as to forget that she would not be alive forever. But it was impossible. As soon as she concentrated on being alive now, she thought of dying also came into her mind. The same thing happened the other way around. Only by conjuring up an intense feeling of one day being dead could she appreciate how terribly good it was to be alive. It was like two sides of a coin that she kept turning over and over. And the bigger and clearer on one side of the coin became, the bigger and the clearer the other side became too. You can't experience being alive without realizing that you have to die, she thought. But it is just as impossible to realize you have to die without thinking how incredibly amazing it is to be alive. Sophie remembered Granny saying something like that the day the doctor told her she was ill. I never realized how rich life was until now, she said. How tragic that most people had to get ill before they understood what a gift it was to be alive, or else that they had to find a mysterious letter in the mailbox. Perhaps she should go and see if any more letters had arrived. Sophie hurried to the gate and looked inside the green mailbox. She was startled to find that it contained another white envelope, exactly like the first. But the mailbox had definitely been empty when she took the first envelope. This envelope had her name on it as well. She tore it open and fished out the note the same size as the first one. Where does the word came from? It said. I don't know, Sophie thought. Surely nobody really knows, and yet Sophie thought it was a fair question. For the first time in her life, she felt it wasn't right to live in the world without at least inquiring where it came from. The mysterious letter had made Sophie's head spin. She decided to go and sit in the den. The den was Sophie's top secret hiding place. It was where she went when she was terribly angry, terribly miserable, or terribly happy. Today, she was simply confused. Okay, that's for today's reading, day 3. It's a lot of text, almost 3 pages on PDF, and yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next video. Bye bye.